Welcome to Football Today Team Profile and Preview. And today we are looking at the Minnesota Vikings. Came in our power rankings at 23rd after a 7-10 season. It's a new era for the Vikings. Last year they were 22nd in offensive scoring, 18th in EPA per play. On defense, they surprised. They were 13th in scoring, 17th in EPA per play. Kevin O'Connell's third season as a head coach after being the Rams and Commanders OC. Wes Phillips is still there as the offense coordinator, and Brian Flores' second season came from the Steelers after being fired by the Dolphins as a head coach. This team is without Kirk Cousins leading them for the first time since 2017. They signed Sam Darnold and then drafted J.J. McCarthy as their QB. Justin, I feel like this is a team that is going to be competitive with some good teams. It's going to look bad for some teams. I don't feel like this is the year for the Minnesota Vikings. I think this is a growing year for them, in the post Kirk Cousins era.
No, certainly it's a year of transition, and certainly, I think now you're going to have certain things be exposed. Like I don't fully love how they've drafted the last couple years, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and they've certainly lost a lot of talent on the defensive side of the ball as well. And some of the success of the offense has maybe clouded that over the last couple years. But the timing to at least move on from Kirk Cousins and coming into this new era of Vikings football, I think it's not an easy decision, but him being 36 years old, coming off the torn Achilles, it just kind of made sense. Bobby, in 6 years with Kirk Cousins, how many times have the Vikings made the playoffs?
I believe 3 times.
Twice. How many playoff victories do they have?
One versus the New Orleans Saints.
One. Honestly, man, I didn't know that until I fully saw it, until I fully looked it up. I thought that they maybe would have had more in 6 years with this combo. And it's a shame that Kevin O'Connell didn't come in sooner. It was a lot of Mike Zimmer years in there too.
And that's the counter to it, right? Because you think, oh, well, they lost, the first year. But they didn't lose because of Kirk Cousins in that playoff performance versus the Giants. He played extremely well. It was the defensive side's issues. And then they fired their defensive coordinator, which was, we all saw that one coming 10 miles away. Bring in Brian Flores. And, if Kirk Cousins stayed healthy last year, this is a playoff team, right? Like this is a team that is in the playoffs last year and could have, competed, probably not a team that's beating the 49ers, but I think they could have competed with every other team in the conference and on any given Sunday, right? Like, Kirk Cousins was balling last year, right? Career high for yards per game, 70% completion rate, 18 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. And their defense was awful in the beginning part of the season, right? The defense was, they were having to pass a lot. They gave up 27 points per game in all their losses. The defense, went from 11th in EPA per play to 22nd, comparing wins and losses. So it's just, it happened at a bad time because if he stays healthy, that's a team that's probably in the playoffs.
And also they started 0-3 last year, I'm pretty sure. They were -7 in turnover differential the first 3 weeks of the season. We saw that crazy primetime game against the Eagles where they were playing in Philly and Justin Jefferson fumbles the ball out of the back end of the back part of the end zone. Alexander Madison just couldn't hold on to the ball for his life. Just fumble after fumble after fumble. So there are certain things that went wrong for the Vikings last year that I don't think are going to go wrong again for them. But even like you talk about Kirk Cousins, then the volume stats of Kirk Cousins are awesome. And I look, I'm not gonna sit here and argue just because I'm gonna talk about Kirk Cousins on early downs right now. Not saying that Kirk Cousins is a bad quarterback or a problem for the Vikings, anything like that. But this really did surprise me, Bobby. Where Kirk Cousins on early downs, they struggled in 2023. They were number 22 in EPA per attempt, number 29 in success rate, and number 22 in yards per attempt. And that kind of gives me a little bit of hope for the 2024 Minnesota Vikings because I think it's going to get better with Kevin O'Connell, with the quarterback that he can just form on his own. Nick Mullins, I believe, went 0-3 last year, and his problem was interception. The interceptions that he threw, like all of them on 3rd and 4th down. But you want to know where Nick Mullins ranked on early downs last year out of quarterbacks with 100-plus attempts? He was number 1 in EPA. He was number 5 in success rate, number 2 in yards per attempt, and number 2 in touchdown to interception rate. Kevin O'Connell helped Mullins out by using the highest rate of play action on early downs, number 9 highest rate of motion, and was able to get a ton of production out of him. So why compare a quarterback where Cousins has been a pro for a long time versus Mullins has been with like the Shanahans before? And that's kind of like the most efficient play that we've seen. Not on early downs. Late downs, he threw all the interceptions and it was terrible. He was the worst quarterback in the league on late downs. But I'm interested to see, now that Kirk Cousins is away, now that we have J.J. McCarthy or Sam Darnold, but I think it's going to be J.J. McCarthy, interested to see how the Vikings offense can maybe even get more efficient, get better. You add a guy like Aaron Jones, Justin Jefferson is healthy for the whole year.
Well, that's the thing, is whoever at QB is going to have it really nice on this Minnesota Vikings team, right? You have wide receiver 1 in the NFL. Like, without a doubt, Justin Jefferson is the best wide receiver in the NFL. You have a rookie who, we'll see if he gets suspended or not, in Jordan Anderson, who went 900 yards, 10 touchdowns, and then a tight end with almost 1,900 yards in the last 2 seasons and 11 touchdowns. You have 2 good offensive tackles in Darisaw and O'Neal with a decent interior outside of Ed Ingram, who did improve a lot last year, but still wasn't very good. You know, you're going to get to rely on play action. Like you mentioned, Mullins was first in play action rate. Cousins was fourth. You know, you're going to attack the middle of the field. 63% of Kirk's yards were middle of the field. You know, that speaks to J.J. McCarthy's strengths. This is a team with Justin Jefferson, who is the king of the sideline, who you can just go put out on the sideline and say, go win, is going to do it. So it fits J.J. McCarthy's strengths, where, you know, thrives in play action in the middle of the field, and they just have a ton of talent. They're going to have good protection. And did we add, mentioned that they added Aaron Jones, who I think is a huge upgrade for this team.
Yeah, I think it's one of the more underrated ads of the offseason. Not only considering you look at how Aaron Jones finished the season with the Packers once he kind of got healed from that hamstring injury, or at least the hamstring injury wasn't, holding him back too much. But that was so disappointing from Aaron Jones, I put my hand up as an Aaron Jones fantasy owner last year, getting so excited about, dude, this guy's just good every year. And then you hear hamstring injury in the month of August and September, and then he just got agita. So hopefully Aaron Jones doesn't have that. But also Alexander Madison's just not good.
Yeah, and he turned the ball over, like you mentioned before.
Turned the ball over and wasn't good inside the red zone and had a negative rushing yards over expected. So again, we're talking about how this offense can be helpful to J.J. McCarthy. Like I don't think it just fits to J.J. McCarthy's strengths. I think it fits to any quarterback strengths, like any quarterback that is young or any quarterback that may have, that isn't perfect. This offense, Kevin O'Connell, their strengths can fit overall to what any quarterback is trying to do successfully. And I think the run game is going to be a huge part of that this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a great offensive situation for anyone. Like you mentioned, Aaron Jones is such a huge upgrade for them. Like he's still one of the best backs in the NFL. Like he missed, significant time for the first time of his career last year. And, he turns 30 in December. But they also, there's a new element of this offense that wasn't there in the past, right? With J.J. McCarthy's there, I don't think they should go crazy like this, but you have some element of zone read or, quarterback using his legs and J.J. McCarthy, which, again, with Kirk Cousins, you weren't getting.
Didn't have.
Yeah, that just wasn't in the playbook, and, every scramble of Kirk Cousins was a meme. So it's just a beautiful situation offensively. The question is, how good is JJ? One is, does Sam Darnold start right away? Which it seems like that is what is preferred in Minnesota right now. But eventually, you think McCarthy will get that, because I'm not. I don't think Sam Darnold is finally going to prove us all wrong. And I think at some point they will go to JJ McCarthy, because you just look at the success that O'Connell's been able to have, like you mentioned with Nick. Making Nick Mullins score 30 points in a game. Dobbs kind of frustrated Kevin O'Connell a bit, but you did see a little bit of success early on, and it's just such a good situation that I don't. Maybe you don't start him right away, but eventually I think JJ McCarthy should start for this team year one.
Yeah, who would you like if it's up to you? And obviously we're recording this before camp, and we're not watching Vikings practices, so obviously if JJ McCarthy doesn't look ready in camp, if he doesn't look ready in preseason action, then obviously don't play him to start week one. But I'm of the opinion of, I think JJ can and maybe should start right away. I think playing in a positive environment, like it's not like we're talking Drake May with the Patriots here, where we debated for a couple minutes here, Bobby, where that's a terrible offensive situation. Terrible. This is a good offensive situation, and JJ McCarthy is set up for success in this offense, so why not play him right away? If it's up to you, what are you doing? Who are you starting?
So, I I was not a big fan of JJ McCarthy's game coming out of the draft. Um, right. But it wasn't I would play him because this offensive situation is good. So build up his
Yeah.
confidence in this situation. Give him the easy type of stuff, right? Like I think he's going to be better than Sam Darnold. And like we said, it's what JJ McCarthy does well is a good fit. Play action, throwing over the middle of the field. That's where JJ McCarthy's at his best. And then we'll see how the connection with Justin Jefferson goes. But you could even be bad with Justin Jefferson, and Justin Jefferson will make you look good.
It's still good. Yeah.
So I would, because it's like you said, it's not like. I think playing is the ultimate teacher for quarterbacks. But like you mentioned, where it's like, yeah, but playing could also ruin a quarterback. But I don't see that happening in this Minnesota offense.
No.
So I would probably be on the side of starting JJ McCarthy.
And I think Kevin O'Connell's going to do enough. Then there's enough options, man. There's Aaron Jones out of the backfield, where if you want to check it down and you gotta be more conservative, you have him. You have TJ Hawkinson, who can be in the intermediate part of the field, and he's going to win. Addison, again, we're going to see what happens with Addison, but I think Addison, if he's on the field and he's being smart, he could be a stud, man. He could be a stud. I viewed him as one of the best route runners, in that draft class for wide receivers 2 years ago. And of course, again, you have Justin Jefferson. So, there's just answers. There's answers if you want to be aggressive, and if you can be aggressive, there's answers there. There's answers if you're going to be more conservative. You can lean on that run game, hopefully an offensive line, the interior, that's going to continue to improve, but even have the tackles that are good. There's just answers for quarterbacks in this offense. So regardless of where J.J. McCarthy's at, and he's already ran that pro-style offense at Michigan, I think he's going to be able to, I'm not saying how well he's going to handle it, but I think they can handle it well.
And again, like you mentioned, we're talking about the passing game, but the running game should be severely improved with Aaron Jones, right? I thought Ty Chandler was better than Alexander Madison, who started getting the playing time at the end of the year. So
they were 25th in EPA per rush last year. It's bad.
Yeah, and overall they had the 29th most yards. They were 23rd in yards per carry. So Aaron Jones is going to give you that juice, and he gives you a passing threat of the backfield too. To me, he's been one of the. I know he's been recognized, but one of the more underrated backs in the NFL, because I think in the last few years he's been right up there at the top with the the number 1 and number 2 back in the league, whoever your opinion is. I don't think he's McCaffrey or Henry in those years, but after those two, I have him right there at the top with anybody else. So yeah, this is going to be a heavy play action. I think it's an offense that can have Sam Darnold have his moments, but at the end of the day, Sam Darnold is just not the answer there, and he's gonna frustrate you more than he's gonna make you happy. Defensively, this defense is psychotic. Brian Flores called more cover 0 than cover 1. Which cover 0 is literally just an all-out blitz, and you play in man coverage where you don't have any safety over the top. They're going to put
7 guys coming in.
Yeah, if they keep a back in the block, if the back goes out, they send 6. Just sending one more than they have. A lot of these blitzing defensive coordinators, Wink Martindale, Todd Bowles, though they run cover 0, right? They run it more than other defensive coordinators, but a lot of it is getting in that cover 0 look and backing out of it. Where Brian Flores is the king of no, we're simply going to just run cover 0 and blitz after you. They're gonna put 3 safeties on the field. They led the NFL in blitz rate at 51%. They blitz a linebacker 20 times per game, a DB 15 times per game. They weren't top half in sacks last year with all this, but low average depth of target. I'm not as high on this defense. I love Brian Flores, but I don't like the talent on this defense, and you lost your best player and Danielle Hunter, right? They weren't top half of sacks last year, and teams scored 25 plus on them 8 times. They're going to look really good versus the bad and mid quarterbacks, but I think whenever they're playing real competition, it's not going to be pretty for them, and that's why I'm not so high on the Vikings for this year, because of the division they're in. They're going to be facing the Detroit Lions, who know how to protect that shit up, and Goff's a good quarterback. Jordan Love, I think they can give them some issues, and then we'll see what Chicago looks like. But they would be my number 4 team in the division, and I think the talent is, defensively, it's much different than all those other teams.
Yeah, I mean, basically, the secondary remains the same for the most part. They added Shaq Griffin, but Goner, Danielle Hunter, DJ Wonham, and Marcus Davenport And then the three that you're basically kind of swapping in there are Jonathan Grenard, Andrew Van Ginkel, and Jihad Ward.
Yeah, obviously they drafted Dallas Turner, like you said, a mix of Grenard, Turner, and Van Ginkel. Like they're going to come at you every down, right? Grenard had 12 and a half sacks, 15 tackles for a loss last year. Van Ginkel 6 sacks and 8 tackles for a loss, but then Hunter had 16 and a half sacks, 23 tackles for loss, most in the NFL. Like he had 16 more tackles for loss than anyone on the team, had 8.5 more sacks than anyone else on the team. And by the way, DJ Wanham was second on the team, and he's gone. So like their leading sacks getters that returned are Harrison Smith and Harrison Phillips, a safety and a run-stopping defensive tackle with 3. So obviously that those guys aren't going to be those guys. It's going to be Turner, Grenard, and Van Ginkel. But it's just I don't love the interior of Phillips, Tillery, and Bullard. I think up front it's just they're not going to be an advantage at all. And coverage wise, I think they'll be all right. But again, they're not flushing with talent.
No, and I agree with your assessment, and this is why I think the Vikings are going to wind up being in the teens or even low 20s in EPA per play because they're going to take advantage of bad quarterbacks, like you said. But they are, unfortunately, in a division where I feel like Caleb Williams can be, but especially Jordan Love and Jared Goff, just based on the sample size that we've seen. I think Jared Goff has done a really good job of getting the ball out of his hands very quickly in Detroit, knowing exactly where to go, knowing how to read a defense, shit like that. Jordan Love has got that gamer in him where, he can throw from different kind of arm angles and arm slots and extend some plays at times. So I feel like he's getting it against the blitz. And then Caleb Williams, I feel like he will be by the end of the year on the do not blitz list. And that's what Brian Flores is inevitably and ultimately going to do. They're banking on Grenard and Van Ginkel. And then, of course, you add Dallas Turner. They're banking on them replacing the production of Donnell Hunter and DJ Wanham. And Grenard kind of, he had a career year last year. And I don't want to say it's an anomaly, but it's a different system in
low
Minnesota
total
now.
sacks, hits, and pressures.
Yeah. And he was good in pressure rate to a 12.8% pressure rate. I think that was around where Donnell Hunter was. But Van Ginkel, even though he just piled up 6 sacks, he ranked 10th amongst all qualifying pass rushers and pressure rate at 17.5% last year. But dude, the system is just so different when you go to these high blitz rate defenses where offenses know I have to get rid of the ball quick. It's tough to evaluate like pressure rate and sacks and stuff like that, man. Like, am I really going to sit here and say that Brian Flores, oh man, this is the 27th in pressure rate, that they were the 5th or the 6th worst pressuring unit in the NFL? No, because they're throwing changeups and you're forcing to get rid of the football. And Brian Flores is mission accomplished when that happens with the quarterback and trying to prevent those big plays. So
I agree, but they also didn't have pass rushing talent besides Hunter last year,
right? And he left.
So I think like as a whole, you could be like, oh look, we have 3 guys versus 1, but I think Hunter is like by far and away the alpha of that group. We'll see how Dallas Turner, progresses as a rookie.
What do you think of him? So we both like Jared Verse better. I think we both of them just viewed him as a more complete player. What do you think of Dallas Turner coming into this Flores system?
This is a perfect fit for Brian Flores, right? Because he can actually drop back in coverage, can run with anybody. I think Flores is going to have a ton of fun for him, right? Dropping him back, and then he can get to the quarterback faster, faster than any of the edges in this last class. And he can he's not this big strong edge, but he can utilize some power in his game. I think it's a great fit. I don't think he's going to come in and dominate right away, but I think Brian Flores was fist pumping when they got this guy because he's a perfect fit for what they're going to do.
Did they have to move up to get him again? Or
yeah, they traded up a lot to get him.
Okay. Thought they did.
With the line, Ivan Pace is going to be all over the field. Another guy that Brian Flores loves. I don't know how did he go undrafted, right? I understand he's so small, right? And this is not a Minnesota Vikings conference because they didn't draft him either. But I just don't understand how there's a team in the 7th round and say, hey, why don't we take a shot on this guy who was the most productive linebacker in the nation, despite the fact that he's small,
And also
right?
so athletic. Like, that's the time, like, day 3 of the draft is where you take those chances on guys that are super athletic and maybe not totally refined as a football player. So I'm with you. He's my X factor this year.
Okay.
Like, he's athletic, he's twitchy, bends, spins away from blockers as a blitzer. His flash plays are flashy and fun. But I think the biggest thing for him this year, Bobby, he needs to develop confidence and just more consistency as a run defender and
Which is
down
going to
by
be
down
tough.
defender.
That's where the size comes into play, right? That's where the negatives do show up on Ivan Pace.
Right. But I
But
do think, like, I see a player, JOK is just an animal, and he's like one of my favorite players in the NFL right now. But just at least from the profile of a guy that can blitz, a guy that can get pressure, a guy that's so athletic, maybe a little undersized, I see like a player that can develop into a JOK type player where just be a disruptor, man. Just fucking fuck shit up. And that's what I think Ivan Pace can do.
yeah, I mean, JOK's got a big size advantage on him. But yeah, Ivan Pace is, like you said, he is a disruptor on that defense. Coverage wise, you got Byron Murphy, Shaq Griffin, like you mentioned, comes in. Um, Josh Metellus and Cam Bynum are holding the slot duties, and that's why I talk about they run 3 safeties. Like, both those guys are going to be playing basically equal amount of nickel corner. And then you got Harrison Smith, who they do a lot of things with. You know what's surprising? Andrew Booth. I'm surprised Andrew Booth, like, he could be on the chopping block with this team, right? Like, OTA reports for the Minnesota Vikings are like, he could be someone that's cut. He's barely gotten to play, but last year when he did play, he looked well. He played well. I'd be really surprised if they went and pulled the trigger. Who was their second round pick 2 years ago out of Clemson, who was, the guy who fell the first that people are probably the most surprised about. But I think secondary wise, I like Byron Murphy a lot. But this is also like, do you feel great about this group?
No. No. I'm interested to see how the depth chart shakes out because there is Shaq Griffin, who last year was basically almost the first time in his career where he didn't get like 100% of the snaps that he was eligible to get. So if he's going to stay healthy, then I think he's going to be a starter. But Byron Murphy and Mekhi Blackman have been there. A lot of pressure on them to prevent those big plays. I love Josh Metellus, by the way, because he's one of the more intriguing he's one of the more intriguing players on that defense as a safety. Spends a lot of time in the slot and in the box. Flores also uses him a ton as a blitzer. 30 pressures, 3 sacks, and 7 QB hits per PFF last year. So he's a fun player to just like, hey, what do you do? You can kind of do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, it's like
But yeah,
that star role that, and again, like I said, Flores loves to do those 3 safety things.
but
And
that secondary isn't screaming like it's not screaming any glaring confidence. You know what I mean?
yeah, like but I also don't look at it and I'm like, oh my gosh, this secondary is getting ready to be
No.
torched. But there's questions. So like, we look at new additions, right? You had Sam Darnold, Aaron Jones, Trent Sherfield, who I think will be their starting slot wide receiver from the Bills. Added David Quesenberry as a swing tackle, Jerry Tillery, and then at edge where they added Jonathan Gennard, Andrew Van Ginkel, Jihad Ward, linebacker Blake Cashman, and then cornerback Shaq Griffin. They lost Kirk Cousins, Alexander Madison, KJ Osborne, Udo, Austin Schlottman, Danielle Hunter, DJ Wanham, and Jordan Hicks. I think they got worse, but I think that's just so heavily based on Kirk Cousins leaving. When you just talk about free agency and stuff.
No, I mean we just made an argument that defensively they got worse. I mean, even Jordan Hicks and a Blake Cashman swap was another one that we didn't mention.
Yeah, losing Hunter hurts.
Yeah.
And again, I think Trent Sherfield is who's going to separate himself as that slot wide receiver. But he's also not super inspiring. And then the draft class, you have JJ McCarthy and Dallas Turner in the first round. Passed away. Kyrie Jackson, obviously, in the 4th round, so that's not there anymore. And then you have 2 6th-round picks on Walter Rouse, and then a kicker, another offensive lineman in the 7th round, and the defense tackle Levi Drake Rodriguez. So basically, it's basically just the 2 first-round picks who are going to have immediate impact. And if they don't start JJ McCarthy, he doesn't have immediate impact anyway. So this is where I want to finish it before we do our X Factor and stuff. Which NFC North team do you see them matching up talent-wise defensively?
Defensively. They're the worst defense.
Yeah, I don't think it's even close roster-wise to any of those teams. Like not even close. And those are rosters that all have good defensive players. And pending what the Chicago Bears look like in the Caleb Williams era, have offenses that can light you up too.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm low on it, right? Like we have, over under 7.5 wins. I have them going 7-10. They're the number 4 team in the division, and I don't think this is a team that's, like they're going to be out. Like they have a brutal schedule, right? Like you have the Giants week 1. That's not brutal. Then you have the 49ers, Texans, Packers, Jets, Lions, Rams, Colts, and Jags. Like the first game that they're favored is the Colts in November. They're favored in 3 games this year.
Not good.
Yeah, so like combination of brutal schedule and just not a super talented roster on defense. Offensively, yes, I have them at under. My X factor is Aaron Jones though, because that run game could be the ultimate neutralizer for them. And if he can stay healthy, he can really take that offense to another level and help out whoever's at quarterback.
Yeah. But this is where I think you're going to see. I mentioned this at the start of the show. This is where I think you're going to see. Kwesi hasn't had awesome draft classes. I love the analytics. I love that that's his background. But 2022, Lewis Cine and Andrew Booth, your first 2 picks, pick 32, pick 42. Where are those guys in the secondary? Where's Lewis Cine? Where's he in the depth chart? You mentioned Ed Ingram, who's developed kind of well. Brian Asamoah was their 66th pick of the draft. 2023, Jordan Addison, good pick. Now he's got off the field issues. Mekhi Blackman, good pick. Then he had Jay Ward, Jacqueline Roy, Jaron Hall. Again, we'll see with that draft class. And then this year, obviously, Kyrie Jackson does put an absolute bummer in all of this. It's terrible. But J.J. McCarthy and Dallas Turner are basically going to be the headlines of this draft class, and we'll see how they turn into. So, but I think they're kind of paying for, now that Kirk Cousins is gone, and you're relying on the rest of the team to kind of pick up the quarterback. Now I think you're going to see some of the flaws of how they've tried to build the teams over the last couple of years, and I don't think it's gone very well.
Yeah. Offensively, they were 22nd in points per game last year. Better or worse than 16th?
They're worse, but they're in between 16 to 22.
I'm going to say better.
Better than 16th?
Yeah, there's so much talent. And like you mentioned, Aaron Jones. I'm going to say better.
Yeah, that's why I hesitated. I could see it. I like them. I like them offensively. I don't think that's the issue. I think I agree with you. They have a tough schedule. So what's their over under?
7.5 wins.
I'm going under.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to finish in last.
Yeah. Same. My under 7-10. I have them going at 7-10. They're just the number 4 team in the division. All right. That was the Minnesota Vikings, and this is Football Today.